Hello, folks. Welcome to the Thrive podcast. Which one is this? 9? Whatever number it is. I am Untrustedlife. I am a programmer. And next to me, although only virtually, is TLPineapple. Please introduce yourself, TLPineapple.
Hello, I'm here for outreach.
He's our awesome new outreach guy who does a great job. And then we have our game designer, TJWhale.
Hey, dude. How's it going?
And then we
To be here
have
on the stream.
and then we
So it's
have
good to be here on the stream. Get the rhythm eventually, I think.
Okay, so then we have that one dude who is, I think they're an artist, and then we have OBPSG, who is also a programmer, whose mic is currently muted.
Yes, fine.
My phone just went to the screensaver. And then we have an artist, Narotiza.
Hello.
Narotiza is awesome. And then we have fellow programmer, hhyyrylainen.
Hey.
And then we have other art person, Dph Kraken. Or also known as ATP Kraken.
Hello.
They're not saying anything. It's fine. And then we have another programmer, Dak28, who is responsible for the new Prokaryotic gameplay.
Hello.
And then we have a crodnu, who is also a programmer who hasn't done anything for a while. I'm sorry, crodnu.
Ouch.
He's still an awesome person, though. And we did not actually create a solid plan of what to talk about this podcast, so we're just going to ramble on about things and stuff going on right now and all that other shenanigans.
Rambling's the best.
Yep, and answer questions as they pop up.
Maybe show some gameplay.
Oh yeah, we just managed to get the AMD graphics card cloud bug fixed. That's quite the achievement.
That's awesome. How did it happen? Did someone turn up and do it? Like, do you know where they came from? What happened?
Yeah, someone just turned up and submitted a pull request.
It was
like,
Shimi Shaman submitted the pull request, and basically they only made like a short description and didn't really reply to any of our comments at all. So they are a mystery.
It's cool. Feels like being helped by Batman or something.
Yeah, Batman programmer. Which is great because neither of us have NVIDIA cards, like programmer-wise, which made it really, really hard for us to fix that bug. Like I tried so hard, like on an ATP on a laptop with an AMD graphics card that I gained access to, but nothing came of it. So I'm glad that someone came around and actually fixed it properly.
Yeah, it's great news. I put up a few adverts. I put one up on the AMD developers forum, so it may have come from there, but I guess we'll never know.
We tried to get Spike Viper to be on the podcast, but he has a robotics competition. If no one knows, he's been doing a really, really cool Let's Play of Thrive, and as you guys know, we like to invite people who play Thrive onto the podcast.
It's definitely a very enjoyable Let's Play.
So
AMD fix. So do you think, I mean, where are we at with it? Do you think it's kind of hopefully going to work on all AMD machines? Because that would be really nice for everyone who hasn't been able to see the clouds thus far.
So far, it's worked on everyone that we've tested it with.
Awesome, that's great.
By the way, if you want this AMD fix, just like DM me on Discord and I'll send you it. I might just post the download link on Discord. Just which is kind of unfortunate because like it has a bunch of other new features on that in that build that you'll get to try out, but it's like not an official release. So we have our Prokaryotic gameplay, which we recently added, and which I did some bug fixing for. So like there was a bug in Kinesis Let's Play where the cell started gyrating randomly. I fixed that, and now I'm in the process of adding floating iron chunks, which is a fun time.
How are you getting on with it? You were saying it was a bit tricky. Like, what are the kind of how is it going?
It's going pretty well actually. Like I just had never like written a whole new system in Thrive before. Like I've made components, so it was just I had to like figure out how that works before doing it. Like what I've been doing is like it's like I took an old system and like rewrote it or whatever. And but now I had to add a whole new system called the compound venter system.
That's cool. A learning experience for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun time.
Were you also saying it might work for the new death mechanics that we're talking about, like having a cell kind of break apart slowly and release compounds? Might it tie into that somehow?
Yep. Yeah, the compound venter system is exactly what we'll use for that. So like when the cell will die, what we'll probably do is like break up the membrane into a bunch of individual membranes, and then they'll vent compounds outwards until they rot away, and then that way we can have people who can be scavengers, or they can be decomposers, and stuff like that, which should add like a whole new kind of gameplay to the game. It
That
would
sounds
also
really cool.
make killing cells with toxins way more rewarding because their clouds don't dissipate immediately. Because they'll break into chunks and slowly decompose away. It might allow us to add some new organelles too, like whatever it is that bacteria and fungi use to actually break down to actually increase the rate at which something breaks down might now be then a thing we can add.
That'd be quite cool.
Lysosomes? Maybe. I think a lot of cells have lysosomes, but so yeah, that'd be cool. So then you could like be the one that like goes and like makes the cell decompose faster and you get more compounds out of it or whatever. Like maybe that's an agent we add. I don't know.
That sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a interesting thing to add. One question I had about the game is because with a large cell dying
Kraken.
becoming kind of a
Hi.
I'm sorry this is taking so long. They gave our food to someone else.
What?
What?
So now I'm still waiting and hopefully they're remaking our order.
Your mic's unmuted.
Dph Kraken voice reveal.
Just wanted to let you know why this is taking so long.
Are you
okay,
talking
cool.
to
Hope you
us?
get your food soon. Like,
Yeah.
I was just mentioning about like big cells when they die. It sounds really interesting if they kind of become like a sort of food source where different smaller cells can kind of fight over getting the resources from them, that kind of thing. Though I suppose at the moment we have a lot of cells on the screen. You're always seeing 10 or 15 cells. I don't know what everyone thinks. Like, do you imagine the final stage having that kind of density of cells, or do you imagine things being more spread out? And when a big cell dies, that's quite a big event, and little cells can kind of get in on it and that kind of thing.
I think it really depends on the cell. Like, we had some old concept art. Let me open up my. I have like a whole folder filled with Thrive concept art on my computer. That I use to like I have like my desktop is a slideshow and it's just a slideshow of Thrive concept art.
That's cool. Very motivating.
Yeah, it's fun. But if I go to my slides, there was a specific one. Here we go. So like it makes sense for plants to be packed into groups.
That's cool.
So like in this screenshot up here, like it'd be interesting for it to vary, like based on the biome and based on the cell. Like maybe there's like a little algae forest to your right or whatever. And then in other places there's a lot less going on. That sort of thing.
That'd be quite cool.
That sounds really nice. I kind of had the vision at one point of like in a very sunlit, like high area, maybe a tide pool or maybe like the surface ocean. Yeah, there's like lots of different, at sort of algae type cells, but maybe big sort of eukaryotic photosynthesizers with large cell walls, and you can kind of swim around between them, and they're kind of like these big, almost a bit like cows, like slow moving giant things, and you can sort of live your life in between them in that kind of foresty way. I think we're probably not too far away from having that be possible if you're a small prokaryote and you have these large cells with big cell walls and stuff. That I think would be quite cool.
Yeah, that's one issue with the prokaryote gameplay right now, is that it doesn't actually size your cell correctly. Which is something we plan to fix. Because right now when you play as a prokaryote, even though you are 1 hex of cytoplasm, like like all the bacteria in the game, like for people who don't know how the game works, is it just scales them down by 50% when they're a prokaryote so that they look smaller. So that they look more like, bacteria. And right now that doesn't affect the player when they're a prokaryote. So
The player looks kind of giant when you're swimming around.
Even though you're just like 1 hex of cytoplasm, right? So we plan to fix that too. And then you'll be able to like swim around as this little guy swimming in between all the big things, which should be cool. And also now that there's like big floating iron chunks all over the place, like the game, it feels more 3D now.
Yeah, true. I like the big iron chunks. They feel quite like terrain, they feel quite sort of, they make it, they sort of feel like it's something to swim around in a sense.
Do you have any screenshots of that?
Of the iron?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I was actually
I'm not sure everyone's seen.
conversing with somebody earlier. Bam. There's a big iron chunk on the right.
I think I definitely prefer the big iron chunks to the small ones, because I think the small ones look good and they're cool and they're quite hard to notice when you're swimming around. I wonder though, if they're surrounded by an iron cloud, then maybe that's a bit easier, but it is quite hard to see the little chunks. They're kind of only the size of an organelle, whereas those big ones, it's quite hard to miss them.
Yeah, my couple of playthroughs of I haven't seen any of the smaller ones yet. I'm sure I've run into them, I just haven't seen them.
Oh yeah, adding the iron was interesting because I actually had to go and change the shaders because surprisingly, like the membranes actually were like overlaid over the top 2D. But now they're like properly depth checked. So like if there's a big iron chunk that's 3D between the cell and you, like the iron chunk will be over it, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
Like, zoomed at a certain level, so yeah.
I mean, like before, the cells were kind of being rendered in 2D with the membrane as like a flat disk. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, basically, like they were rendered like as 2D. Like the organelles were 3D, but the membranes weren't. I mean, they were, but they were being drawn 2D. Anyway.
Yeah, cool. That's a good thing to fix.
Technically, like they were drawn in 3D, but the depth checking was off, so it's always drawn on top of everything.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, so now that's fixed. Yeah, and anything like we didn't really plan out this podcast very well, you guys. Usually we plan it out a little bit beforehand.
Well, there's been some questions in the chat. We could look at answering a few of those.
Maybe. Anyone else want anything? Anyone else want to talk about anything? I feel like we can have a huge discussion. There's a lot of us here.
There is one discussion that I was quite hopeful we could maybe get into, which is about how far away the next release should be. Because I think there's a lot of different arguments around it. Like, for example, we have the AMD fix, so it's nice to get that out there quite quickly for people who haven't kind of played the game properly, who have AMD cards. That's quite nice. On the other hand, it's nice to do kind of big releases far apart, because that then feels quite dramatic and exciting, and it's easier to build hype for something that's been a while, rather than if you release every week, it's harder to build up for it. And also there's the question of how much of the content that we've got planned is sort of reasonable to do in the next short period. Because I think I would want to hold my hands up and say I've learned a lot from the planning process, and I think we've got 48 open issues at the moment in the next release, and I think probably that's a bit too ambitious. I know some of them are marked as non-gating and kind of are a bit less sort of in it than other ones, but I wonder how, whether we should cut that down a bit, and if so, how much do we cut it down, and kind of what features should we keep in this one and move to the other ones. I'm interested in anyone's opinions on that kind of thing.
Well, when I merge my current branch in, that'll be fixing 4 issues. So
if you do that every day, we'll be done in 10 days. That'd be pretty sweet.
You guys would need to pay me more for that.
We'll triple your pay.
Yeah, because you have the power to do that. It's just like somehow just convene players, just be like, all right, we need to triple UL's amount of money they're making, make them work full time, even though they have school. Like this last week has been kind of hard for me because I just got back to my university, so I haven't been working on Thrive as much, and I feel bad about that. But also I have to do school and Thrive at the same time.
School's especially stressful in the beginning weeks because you got everything sorted out and new courses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, no, like that's not doable. We can't fix 4 issues a day. Even with more than one programmer.
I think also a lot of issues are different sizes. So there's some which are quite small, like, make Flagella more impactful. I think maybe we've already done that, or it's another little tweaky balance. But things like add the procedural patch map generator, that could take several weeks, I think, to get a good procedural generator going, So I guess some of the issues in there are quite easy and some of them are probably quite difficult.
Yeah. I mean, what does everyone else think on this? So I'm not the only one talking.
There's definitely some bigger issues that I think we'll probably need to push back to the next release in like a month or two, when we are looking at releasing probably something like the particle or the patch map generator needs to be pushed back. And then there's a lot of small issues that I could fix in 30 minutes max, but I'm trying to get other people to do them.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, the chain of command, hhyyrylainen is actually the programming team lead. Narotiza is the art team lead. Oliver is the composer team lead. And TJWhale is the game designer. And the theorist team lead. And so we have a chain of command where it's one person is the person who's organizing the team, the other people are the ones. Well, the music area of development does have a team now. We have one other composer. So a lot of the time we end up relying on hhyyrylainen to fix big issues because he's the engine guy, right? And that's hard for hhyyrylainen because hhyyrylainen doesn't have much free time. And also hhyyrylainen doesn't have a Patreon or anything like that, and it can be hard to get everything done.
Yeah, definitely. Once the deadlines start approaching for all the school projects at once in 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be pretty terrible for me.
Yeah, and for me.
Yes, I totally know what that was like.
So yeah, so there's gonna be some stuff we're gonna have to push back. Although I think that once Prokaryotic gameplay sizes you correct, hi Quantum Crab, by the way. Once Prokaryotic gameplay sizes you correctly, and we have Iron done, and balancing done, like that feels like a release to me. So like I was actually the one who suggested, I was like, we should like put out a new release every 2 months or whatever. And people seem to think it's a good idea, but it's also iffy. That's what we're referring to here.
I agree. I like the idea of relatively frequent releases. I do think there's a few things that it'd be nice to kind of have at least a go at before we release. Like I think the organelle gluttony thing, where you just kind of put tons and tons of organelles on your cell. I think it'd be quite nice to at least try and sort of fix that a little bit and make it more kind of, people sort of specialize their cell a bit more. Got a few ideas for that. And a couple of other things like that, like try and get the movement balancing right and that kind of thing, just to kind of make sure that when we do a release, we get a lot of feedback from the players about where the game itself is at, because I think we haven't quite got it. For example, organelle gluttony is something that's not really fixed yet, I don't think.
Did your microphone just cut off?
Did you miss the second half of that?
Yeah,
I just trailed off. It wasn't very exciting oratory. Like it was just, yeah.
I think it was my connection that was having problems.
Yeah, I heard the end of his thing.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I was saying I'm comfortable with a relatively soon release, and I think it'd be nice from a gameplay perspective to kind of get some of the gameplay stuff a bit in a better place, like storage rebalancing and the cost of organelles, and maybe like the osmoregulation costs and that kind of stuff, just a bit tweaked before we do, because then we get a lot of feedback from players about what they think of the new build and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, Justice Skeluxus, who just asked a question on the chat, is the full game going to cost money? No, the full game is going to be free. This is a open source game. Like, we're all volunteers here, and the people who do make a little bit of money from it, like Oliver and me, like Oliver makes some money from his music. Like it's not enough to like survive or anything like that. We're still all volunteers. Just some people have more reason to work than others. Essentially.
So people giving funding are volunteers too.
Yeah, exactly.
You should plug your Patreon by saying that they get access to the development builds. So if you want to see before everyone else what the new features are like, you can support Untrustedlife on Patreon.
Yep, patreon.com/untrustedlife. But I don't want to be plugging my Patreon every time we talk, because I feel kind of dirty doing that,
For me, from my perspective, I'm quite comfortable with you getting Patreon money, because I think you as with everyone, you give a lot to the project, and that's really cool. And I like to see, the project move faster, especially as it's helped you spend more time on it. So from my perspective, it's a really positive thing. I'd also like to say thanks to everyone who has given money and is giving money. That's really kind of you. Like, that's really appreciated. We kind of make no promises about what we're going to do in the future, but it's just really nice to know there's some support out there for the project and that people want to see this happen as much as we do.
Question: if I become a Patreon, will you call me onto your stream? Well, Gamer Demetrius, I suppose that depends. Are you gonna start making YouTube videos? We like calling YouTubers onto the stream. Like Kinesis supports me on Patreon. He was on the stream, but that's because he's a YouTuber. Now if you were like crazy and you were like, okay, I'm gonna give like $1 million to you or something, then maybe we would invite you onto the stream. But because that'd be crazy. that'd be notable. But no, we like inviting YouTubers. That was an interesting question. Is everyone okay?
Yeah.
I don't know how to talk to people.
It's okay.
Mad control over here is begging for a restart button.
Yeah. Mad Controller DM'd me about that too.
What do you mean, like,
said
restart what? The game or the podcast or what?
So when you die right now, you go extinct. and then you have to go to the main menu and then hit new game. So you have to like
Okay.
click menu, main menu, new game. So what they want is a button that just does that.
That's the
Starts the
punishment
game.
for being bad at the game. It should like say get good, and if you press it, it closes the game.
You also it should delete one file at random from your computer just to really
Yeah,
push the point
there
home.
could be a chance it deletes a folder, System 32 or whatever. Really hardcore.
Ooh.
Would it just be a shortcut to starting a new game, or would it like keep you in the same world but just start you as the default cell again?
It would start a whole new game.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Thrive is
But
permadeath. Once you die 30 times, you got to do something.
Have to wait for the next release. Plan for the future with deaths is this is the kind of current thing in my head, but it's been interesting to get feedback from everyone on it. Is that kind of like as you play, you'll get given some kind of relatedness points. So they're kind of points that you build up as you're playing the game. And then if your species goes extinct, you can spend some relatedness points to switch to a related species. So if you had a species that only split off from yours relatively recently, that wouldn't cost very many relatedness points to switch to. But if you're a plant and you want to switch to being a badger or something, that's going to cost you tons and tons of points. And then we can kind of modulate difficulty with, if you're playing on like Ultra Iron Man mode, you don't get any relatedness points. And if you die out, that's the end of it. Whereas if you're playing on easy mode, you kind of get infinite relatedness points and you can switch to any other species kind of any time that you're playing through the world.
That'd be
kind
fun.
of the concept for game overs.
That'd be like a sandbox. Like just be whatever species you want. That'd be cool. Like let's say you're like it's the future of the game and we're like in the industrial stage and then everyone nukes each other into oblivion and it's like, okay, I'm gonna play as that bacteria now.
I think that'd be really cool. Like, events that move you backwards in the evolutionary history. I think that'd be really interesting. You got to be a bit careful you're not too hardcore on people. But yeah, I think that'd be really awesome.
That would
be
also
cool.
that'd just be an interesting planet to play through, one that's been irradiated like that.
Yeah, and it like also like shows like how everything interconnects. Like it's like, oh, you died in this stage. Well, you can still go back and play as this cell or whatever. They're around still. That kind of thing. Like that'd be cool.
I think that kind of mechanic would give us quite a lot of control. For like Iron Man mode, you can, you have to stick with your one species, but then maybe on medium, sort of normal difficulty, you get like a few relatedness points every time you go to the editor, and then switching to a close species costs 5, and switching to a distant one costs 200 or something. So we can kind of modulate how much flexibility you have for switching when you die.
Yes, Panzer Bros. Even right now, like AI species evolve. They asked if the what are they? They asked if the related species evolve and mutate on their own.
Yeah, the plan is you start out as literally the only species on the planet, and everything else just expands outward from there. Of course, that's not how it is in the game yet, but
yep,
hopefully soon.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, starting as a prokaryote is like the first part of that. Of getting that.
Definitely.
What else could we talk
I'm looking
about? Oh, sorry.
Just going to say that I'm looking forward to when we get the patch map in and we have that thing of you start from one thing and you spread out, because I think that's really going to take the amount of gameplay we've got up. So at the moment, I reckon someone who's brand new to Thrive might have 20 to 30 minutes where they can play the game, where like you start playing the game, you figure out the controls, you figure out the clouds and that kind of thing, and then you try the different organelles and you also organelle gluttony up to the biggest cell, and then you kind of say, okay, that's most of what we've got at the moment. But I think when you can start in the hydrothermal vent and then move to the ocean floor and then move to the surface and then move to an ice shelf or something, and all of these have different criteria with different species living in them, and you can't do photosynthesis under the water, but you can do it near the surface or in a tide pool or something. I think that's going to suddenly mean you could play for like 2 hours or something, just exploring the different biomes and where they go and what the different species are doing in different areas and how they're evolving and stuff. So I think that's going to be a bit of a game changer for us in terms of how much content we've got for a new player.
Yeah, and one of the fun things is like only recently, like in our dev builds, we now have like dissolved oxygen and CO2 percentages in the water. which actually affect things. And they're also varied by biome, even though every biome has the same setting set for them right now. So like even now, like we could make a biome that has like slightly different mechanics going on. And so like
I think
we're
that's
getting
really cool.
started.
It's a nice addition.
That alone can add a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, I agree. Like I remember testing, I made it so that like the so that there was like 90% carbon dioxide in the hydrothermal vents, and then suddenly like chemosynthesis worked really, really well. It's like, oh, well, now I want to be a chemosynthesizing cell, that kind of thing. So that was neat. But yeah, I'm like super excited for the future of the game now. Like we're actually we're doing it, you guys. We're doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's been a while. This has been a long time coming for Thrive to get to this point where we can finally start adding all the really cool features we wanted to add.
I agree. I think things are in a good place, and I kind of want to say thanks to everyone on the team for everyone who makes any effort at all. Like it's really great. The game is the fruits of all of our labours. So thanks for being here and thanks for contributing.
Oh.
Someone just left.
They're back.
Oh.
Crodnu. Crack open the champagne, boys. That's funny. It's okay, Mirror Monkey. It's okay. So what else could we? We've done a pretty good job of avoiding drama so far, Donkey. The only drama that ever befall the project was solutions.
One extra question I had is: does anyone have any more input on kind of how long it should be for the next release? Does anyone have opinions? Are we talking tomorrow or a month or 2 months? What anyone got feelings on that?
I'm thinking that we'll be releasing in like 2 to 3 months, and yeah, there's the gameplay issues and improvements we talked about before, but like I'd also want to get some of the technical stuff done, like actually pausing the game and the options menu. Many people ask about that. How do I go full screen or something? Then there's a lot of these issues that need to be just like reviewed or something.
Those would be good changes. It's really uncomfortable to like look at the help menu right now because like the game doesn't pause, so you can't really look at it without being attacked by a predator or something.
Yeah, especially in the dev builds, because the AI is a lot more competent now. I improved on the AI code.
That's scary.
Well, yeah. Now, if you don't pay attention to the screen for a little bit, you'll die. Like almost 100% of the time.
So my days of peacefully sailing through the world is gone.
Well, it depends on the world, really. Like you know how Spike was playing. He had a pretty chill world.
Does anyone have that screenshot with a ton of toxins flying around?
Oh yeah, wasn't that in random? It was in random. Yep. Copy link. Bam.
The Colt 44 Magnum from the chat is asking if we can do a custom release or the official release for the AMD fix.
So the problem with that is that we didn't think ahead and didn't create a 0.4.1 branch. We've just been merging our changes onto master. So like if we were doing that, then we could put out the AMD fix and it wouldn't have any of the new features that are incomplete. But at this point, like the new features are kind of stuck there, which are incomplete. So I mean, like I'd be okay with releasing right now, just so that people with AMD cards can play and so that people can get kind of a taste of what's coming next. But I could see reasons not to.
I kind of feel a bit in between you guys that it'd be nice to do a bit more and get like, a bit more gameplay stuff and a few tweaks done. And there's more of that technical stuff that you were talking about, hhyyrylainen. But I don't know if we want to make it a hugely long time for people with AMD, because it'd be nice for them to get a chance to play.
Well, I mean, we've been leaking people the builds with the AMD, so like if somebody has the AMD build now, they could like leak to somebody else or whatever, but it's not an official release. Like one thing that would be interesting is just like creating like a unstable branch or something, like not like an unstable download link. It's like, this is the unstable version or whatever. This is the currently in development version. This is the hot code. That isn't necessarily a dev build, but like it's stuff that we think, oh, this is good enough to release, but not finished. Like it'd be somewhere in between a dev build and an official release. So
one thing we might be benefiting from is like when we do a release, it sort of gets a bit of a hype spike for the project, and kind of like 0.40, I suppose, was a bit of a special case because it was such a big release. But I quite like it that we kind of have a release and we put it out on all our channels and we have a dev blog and stuff. I think that is quite helpful because it kind of focuses everyone's attention. It's like, if you only pay attention to Thrive a little bit, the time to do that is when we do a release and you get to play new features and it's quite stable and that kind of thing. So I think that process is working for us quite well, I think.
it took a couple patches to make it stable after we released it this time around. But yeah.
Yeah, we have usually had the like release candidates 1 and 2. This time we didn't have, so we had a couple of small patches.
Yeah, true. I also wanted to say that I think the stability is really great. So thanks for working on that. Like, it's actually a lot better than I thought it would be at this point. I thought we'd still have a lot of crashes and stuff, but it's actually been really strong. So good job on that, guys.
Yeah, that physics crash was a hard bug to figure out. Like, I remember looking at that for like days. It's like, it's like, but it looks like it's an ogre, but wait a second, no it isn't. It's because of this. Because
there's also that one where the physics one where you got launched up in the air and flew around for a bit and then landed back down on the plane again. That was quite crazy.
That was the physics engine's fault.
Yeah, that one was the physics engine's fault. That's why then we switched to a different physics engine.
Yeah, and then the previous physics engine did get a fix for it, which is not optimal. But...
The good physics engine is one that you kind of forget about, right?
Yeah, that it doesn't like affect you terribly. There was like recently, like the gyrating bug was actually an issue with the mass being not set well, so that was like a physics engine thing. But so the fix was for this last fix, the gyrating cell. The fix was to make it so that each bacteria had each cell had a base mass of 0.7. That's how that was fixed.
Sorry.
Who's apologizing? Oh, Narotiza? That's fine. You didn't do anything wrong. You're just being quiet. It's not a big deal.
Looking at the milestone list, I just noticed that the saving was planned for not 0.4.1, but like I think we have to push it back even more because it's just such a big issue that we couldn't release in like 3 months. We tried to do that as well.
Yes, it requires a huge amount of engine level groundwork to be laid. Doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, like, and I think it's fine that we don't have saving right now, just because you can beat the game in an hour or less. Like, you beat the game in 30 minutes if you play well. I think Spike beats it in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that we can live without for a bit longer. I also think I was over ambitious putting the particle system, in this patch. I think like that's probably another bigger thing that we can leave for later because it doesn't really matter. It'd be nice to have, but it doesn't matter. There was a really interesting idea on the community forums actually. Someone was saying that for agents, like you kind of using particle effects, a bit like a cloud, but not one that stays indefinitely and floats around for other things to swim through, but more of a kind of bit like a magic spell effect. Kind of it spreads out and kind of you fire it and then it's there for a bit and then it dissipates. I think that could be quite interesting. And I think it might solve some of the problems we've had with it, where, we had questions about like, what if a cell swims through its own cloud? What should happen then? And, can it start targeting its own organelles with its own agents and that kind of thing, which is quite confusing. Whereas if it's a bit more of a kind of temporary kind of burst effect, I think that might be a bit easier. I mean, still lasting a reasonable amount of time, so it feels like a fluid, but it might be a bit easier to kind of fit some of the gameplay around it.
I think that also makes more sense as it would slowly dissipate throughout the water and kind of go away.
Kind of once it's diluted, it's not really a threat anymore.
Yeah, I saw somebody playing with the image we use for the clouds. Like right now, what it does is we have this big like tileable image that's Perlin noise. And we use that to display the clouds. And then there was somebody who was like changing that image to create like interesting effects, like to make the clouds look different. It was pretty cool. And I think maybe like if we were to do agents as clouds, then like we could like take a pointer from them and like make like a special not Perlin noise image for them. That looks kind of cool.
I did
Or like
actually.
for viruses or whatever.
I did actually update the cloud texture so it's not Perlin noise anymore.
Right, like right now it's not anymore, but we still use a texture that's tileable.
Mad Controller really wants a graphical overhaul. Just a hunch.
We did a huge graphical overhaul for the last update. Like, the game is way prettier now.
We could definitely use a graphics programmer to do some really fancy shaders and stuff, because right now I have some experience doing that and Untrustedlife has a little bit less. So all our like graphical effects are pretty basic, and would help if we had like a dedicated graphics programmer.
Yeah, I in the recently I like changed the shader for the nitrogen fixing plastid to match the other things, and that looks a lot nicer now in the dev builds. And so now the only organelle that looks a little bit weird is the vacuole, like 'cause it's just like a solid circle inside the cell.
It looks like Mad Controller is talking about the UI, not the overall graphics.
Oh, Narotiza can talk about the UI.
Oh gosh. I have been working on a concept for that for quite a while. Post an image, but it's outdated a bit. Here, let me load it, and I'll just like take a screenshot straight out of the SVG and Inkscape.
Mateo, ideally we would like to make it so you can see organelles again in the editor, yes.
It's an issue
Okay.
in GitHub. If someone wants to do that for us, please do.
So here's one of the more recent ones. But currently I am experimenting with just taking out most of the gradients because they don't quite look good. I really can't stay consistent. If I have one design for too long, I just start hating it. But here it
I think
is
it's tricky like that. It's kind of why websites always update themselves, because when something's been around for a while, people get very used to it and it starts to look less good just because you're used to it.
Yeah, like it looks amazing, and like I remember you posted some concept art for the editor a while back. And then that's kind of that was my inspiration for adding those tooltips that we have now.
Oh, mine didn't have any tooltips though.
Well, it did, because you moused over the organelle, and it like gave you the information about it on the right.
Hmm.
And I added that recently. Yeah.
I had like a question mark button, but there's an organism statistics box to the right. But the tooltip window you added is pretty cool.
But yeah, like I think we're actually closer in the editor to its concept than we are in the main game to its concept.
I mean, mine is still pretty far off. We have stuff like moving organelles, tweaking their properties, the bloody in-game wiki, history, stuff like that.
I still really want us to have an in-game wiki, like properly at some point. The Thrivopedia or whatever we wanted to call it.
Yeah.
Should we?
I would be a bit surprised.
Sorry.
Say I'd be a bit surprised if we ended up doing too much kind of editing of organelles inside the editor, because I think I'd rather go down a road of having more organelles than having less which are individually editable. But you know, I don't know what we'll end up doing in the future, but that's my kind of feeling about it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a amount of work to amount of playability, amount of gameplay thing. Like if we add a new organelle, like there's a whole bunch of new cells you can make. But if we just make it so you can like upgrade, like still get a lot of different cells, it's just harder to get to that, and it doesn't feel as rewarding. Like as like adding a new organelle is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna make my mitochondria more efficient. Bam. Okay, that was fun. But this is like, oh, we can add this organelle that does this. A totally different thing. You know, it's.
Yeah.
Should I mention the technical details about the UI change possibly? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
Like I've been thinking that like because we currently basically use a web browser to show the our GUI, and while that works pretty well, there are some really hard issues with that. Like I think the whole UI freezing is one of them, and I don't think we can actually fix those. So in the long run, I think we'll have to like switch our GUI libraries, and I've been thinking about writing one. So that would mean it would take quite a while before that is ready. So it maybe will be more than 6 months before we change the GUI, because it would be a ton of facet work to do it beforehand. That
Yeah, and if we update
That's
the
fair.
GUI, we'd have to make it work with the new GUI library, which is.
There's
I
quite
think
a
it would
lot of
definitely be
change too.
a mistake to do a big GUI overhaul and then switch engines and have to redo the overhaul. I think that sounds like a bad path. It's better to do the engine work first and then do the other stuff on top.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to do all kinds of GUI concepts now to figure out what we're going to be doing.
We are using Chromium OBPSG. Which is not CE GUI. That's what we used to use. Like, first we had CE GUI, and then we have Chromium, and then we're gonna have something else.
Because
True. If you write your own library, you'll have to name it. That's the most difficult part of writing a library.
yeah, I'm going to probably not name it. So like I'll name it like Leviathan GUI. Like
call it Thrive GUI.
Nice and simple.
Well,
but yeah. So that's a lot of what's we've been talking about and what's been going on. Oh, maybe I should talk. Like, are there specific features we should talk about? Like we've talked about prokaryotes, we've talked about iron just a bit, we've talked about reworking death just a bit.
is there anything we've mentioned that like the people watching haven't really heard about before?
The I don't think they knew we were planning on switching to a new GUI framework, and I don't think they knew about the plans to rework death. They've been talking about the iron because like they watched the GitHub and then like they post about it. Which is fun to watch. They're like, hey, more. I know someone was like, oh, there's more commits about iron. Interesting.
Or as soon as we release it, we'll see some video of someone using a cell to try and push a piece of iron into a hydrothermal vent.
Oh yeah, like that.
Nice.
That's a great transition to the third half of our podcast. And yes, I know I said third half where we just talk about memes, right, or whatever. Like before we started this podcast, I mentioned that I want to add an achievement for like when you get boiled to death in a hydrothermal vent for trying to smeltle the meltle.
There, were there any questions that chat asked that we could talk about? Were there? That's quite a big chat now, but.
I've been kind of pointing out the big ones as they've come up.
That's cool. Hey chat, if you have questions, feel free to ask them now, because we can talk about them.
Dornda Defender, you ask if we can have like a silicon, iron, carbon, or ammonia, or whatever tungsten-based life form. We stick to what we know. So all our life forms right now are carbon-based. However, we are adding all the weird things that cells on Earth can do, like oxidizing iron to make energy. Like that's being added, so you'll be able to eat iron in the next version. Which some people have been playing with already. Which is kind of awesome, and I plan to, and I since we added it, I kind of want to add more stuff like that, like the ones who can oxidize just sulfur, not hydrogen sulfide, but actual just sulfur to do a similar thing, and stuff like that, which would be fun. And then we can have more little rocks floating around to make the environments more interesting, which would be good. What else? If we have iron particles, can we have larger pieces of dust and such? Yes. Question.
I think also with the dust question, one of the features I quite like the idea of is having ice, like floating ice in one of the ice patches, and they kind of move around and you can swim in between them and they kind of come back together again and close you off and stuff. I think that sounds like quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Someone else asked a question. Whenever I tweet at you guys, do you share the same Twitter account? At the first one sees the tweet answers, or do you have a special team to answer? So right now, our game designer TJWhale is actually managing our Twitter.
So hey Demetrius, I've been chatting back and forth with you for a bit. It's been fun.
Mad Controller says I want there to be currents. So do we. They're just not in yet. What's the max growth limit? There is no max growth limit right now, and that's probably to our detriment.
Well, there is the limit that the editor can't be zoomed out, so once you fill it out, you can't place any more stuff.
I also think with max growth limit, we definitely want it to be like an organic consequence of the mechanics in the game. So the biggest you can get is when your osmoregulation overwhelms your ability to pump water out your cell, rather than just capping it at 30 organelles or whatever, because it's much better that way.
Mm-hmm.
Meiosis. So Ilias, will meiosis be added? So the big difference between meiosis and mitosis is the amount of chromosomes being switched between the two cells. So I don't think visually you would be able to see the difference between meiosis and mitosis. However, we do want to add different ways of reproducing to the game. So like we want to add there are some cells that can do a form of sexual reproduction, and we want to add that. And we also posted this big life cycle chart recently on the Discord, which has like 36 different, or is it 24 different stages? And so we want to add like new life cycles and stuff. Right now you're stuck with mitosis though. I don't know if that was a good answer.
Sounded good to me.
Mm-hmm.
The question here.
No, I am not engraving metal. I was playing with a vice grip. I didn't realize you could hear it.
There's a question here. Will all planets be similar or completely different, or will there be only one world? So the plan is when the patch map is in, to then have a patch map generator, which might take us a while to build, but hopefully that will be able to generate a lot of different types of worlds. So I made a prototype of one, and the options that has, it can make different amounts of land versus ocean. So you can have a world which is entirely ocean, or one which is has a lot of land on it. And it can also make worlds which are very frozen or not frozen at all. So you can have ones where you're just completely it's completely ocean and you're totally under the ice sheet. Like what's that moon that has that? Is it
Europa?
It's not Titan, it's Europa. Yeah, that's one. So you can play a kind of Europa-like moon. Okay, yeah, cool. So you can play like that and just live in the hydrothermal vents, but it is a bit boring and obviously you can't get to later stages. Or you can live on an Earth-like planet which has a little bit of ice on it and then quite a lot of land as well and that kind of thing. So yeah, so that's in the prototype. So where how much of that's going to make it into the generator and how long that's going to take and that kind of thing might take a while. But yeah, hopefully even with a microbe stage you'll be able to generate a planet and then play on it and try the different conditions out and that kind of thing.
He's showing the thing I mentioned on stream right now. That's fun. Yeah, and like if the planet is hot, like maybe there's just a bunch of hot springs and you'd be in the hot springs, like that kind of thing. So we definitely want to have planetary variation. That is
also planetary variation over time. So like the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere might start very low and then increase over time as more photosynthesizers produce it and stuff like that. So the planet hopefully will change over time as well as when you create it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to teach about the Great Oxygenation Event, which killed off like 90% of life on Earth.
It just
and triggered impossible snowballs.
We just got the first underwater sieves question of this stream.
What?
Underwater sieves again.
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I think
I
something
mean,
much more
you
interesting
can evolve
than...
as an underwater species. You can't make fire, so you can't get into the industrial stage.
Here's a good question. Will there be parasitic organelles and also symbiotic?
Please, no.
So we have some ideas for like symbiosis, endosymbiosis specifically. So like one idea that was floating around for a little bit is like, now that we have all these bacteria and they all do various things, like it'd be pretty cool if like what happened on Earth was you had a cell, it somehow engulfed a mitochondria, which at the time was an aerobic bacteria that was swimming around, and that mitochondria became part of the cell in quotes, and that's where they think that mitochondria came from. So our idea would be like you'd be able to eat the bacteria in your environment, and some of them would become symbiotic with you. So then you could like place that bacteria in you, like your world's version of a mitochondria, which would be really cool. So
especially if it like kept its appearance, like I'm not sure if we've discussed this at all, but like if you engulfed the bacteria that had both aerobic and photosynthetic proteins, you could have like a 2-in-1 mitochloroplast or something. I don't know. Don't look at me.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That's a cool idea. I
And
also think one thing we talked about with parasitism is the idea of kind of having a straw pilus. So you can go along and kind of stick it into a cell and then just kind of drink some of their compounds and then just kind of swim away. That would be kind of like a mosquito-like parasitic behavior for a cell to have. But we're a bit far away from doing that. We need to do the basic pilus first and then talk about the other variations of it.
Or could inject agents.
yeah, or like you could like stick yourself to the cell, and it'd be swimming around, and you'd be just being a parasite. Like,
Let
like,
me
that'd
be a sentient fungus that's a parasite.
Sentient fungus. That's another thing that came up. What, 2 live streams ago? Along with all the blue plants, because all the other ones died off or whatever. Which but yeah, like that'd be cool. like I don't know, were we on stream when I was talking about the fungus, like the potential to have like the lysosomes? Yeah, like I think we were on stream when I talked about that. But yeah, like we want you to be able to play as a fungus. I definitely want to play as a fungus or a decomposer in general. So it's probably gonna make it in. I mean, it'll definitely make it in, especially once we rework death, which we talked about earlier. And whether that fungus becomes sentient or not, I guess depends.
If you can manage to make a fungus be able to support a self-aware brain, then go ahead, I guess.
Cordyceps.
But cordyceps.
Makes ants suicide over their colony.
I wonder if there will be more suspended particles than just iron. Yes, ideally we want to add a bunch more. And it would like vary by biome. Like we talked about having floating ice, having like sulfur chunks, etc.
Also, addressing the question of life on gas giants and other things other than carbon-based life, I think the general, well, my feeling, and I think I've heard this from other people, is that like the most interesting gameplay to make is the stuff that advances directly to the space stage. So, you know, sort of breaking off to make plant-based gameplay or make, you know, silicon-based life or to make virus-based gameplay. It's a bit tricky because if you start playing as a virus, then how do you then go from there to become a civilization? And because you kind of can't do that, it's not really that interesting to make it. It's always going to be a little stubby branch. Whereas it'd be nice to kind of build the main trunk of the game first and try and get all the stages where you can play as a prokaryote, then as a eukaryote, then as a multicellular colony, then as a larger creature, and that lets you kind of go forwards. And that's, I think, the most interesting things that we all want to make.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of gameplay is so far, like we haven't intended to make plant gameplay, but you can play as an algae now. Like I feel like that kind of stuff will just happen, you know, like as we add more features. It's like if you want to break away and do something weird like play as a plant, well, I mean you can, like even right now. It's just not that interesting.
Yeah, true.
So I feel like all that kind of emerge.
Yeah, I agree.
Like from us adding new features, like virus gameplay. Like we're probably not going to add virus gameplay, like at least at first, like because that's actually like that's a totally different kind of thing. Like it's not even technically alive. And so like if we break away and add the viruses, like that doesn't really make gameplay more fun in general. So it's something we wouldn't do like right away, but like adding more variations on prokaryotes, like that'll probably happen because that leads to fun gameplay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about sentient hive minds, which is a fascinating question. First point to make is no one knows how the later stages are going to work because basically the team that arrives to make them is going to make all the decisions about how they actually work. But I really like the idea of things like sentient hive minds, where in the civilization stages, kind of where you play from a tribe all the way up to the space stage, you kind of bring a lot of your biology with you. So if you were pigeons, for example, that developed brains, I suppose you need to be a bigger bird, then maybe you get like really fast ability to travel across the map, and you can travel across water from the beginning, but you have like a reduced trade network and you can't trade so easily between cities. Whereas if you were elephants that evolved sentience, then you would have a really big carrying capacity, but you'd be really slow and armies would move slowly on the map and various things like this. And so, yeah, I think sentient hive minds is a really interesting one, or at least eusocial species. So if you were sort of like giant ants that each individual developed sentience, you could have fascinating things like maybe your war exhaustion would be really low because each of the sort of ant-like things is very willing to sacrifice itself for the good of the community. But maybe like scientific innovation would be quite low because you wouldn't have a culture of individualism where individual scientists can make breakthroughs. Everyone's much more conformist and does what's best for the hive. So I think some of that stuff could be really interesting later on in the civilization stages.
Yeah, I think that'd be really fun. One thing. So the way I like personally working on features, it's like I want to work on this feature that'll most likely lead to the development of more features later on. So the iron is a vector for reworking death. Like those two will work very similarly. So that's why I'm working on iron now. So I think that if we add eusocial species, that's a vector to add a basic version of the strategy mode. Because if you're eusocial, you probably want to play it like a strategy mode, right? So that's a vector to get a strategy mode in the game.
Although I don't think eusocial species are really controlled by one hive mind, but it's like I think it's just really advanced emergent mechanics.
Right, but I feel like the best way to represent it would be strategy mode.
Right. Yeah.
Like it'd be pretty boring to just be a drone. Like an ant.
I guess it depends what you do, I suppose. Like if you're a bee and you were flying around and you were gathering nectar and then flying back to the hive, that kind of sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, I suppose.
I agree, you don't just want to be an ant on trash duty for like your whole life.
By the way, folks, Boost113 in the chat, that is hhyyrylainen. So you know. He's in there answering questions.
Yay.
And apparently as well messing up the recording.
We did a pretty good job starting the podcast this time around. I think that was way more ordered. We just didn't have like a solid plan this time. So like the next time we do a podcast, we'll be able to start it like we started this one, but we'll have like a plan. It'll be an even better podcast episode.
One thing we could do as well.
Oh, sorry.
One thing we could do as well is submit, like we could have a forum thread for questions to be submitted, and then we could go through them in advance and kind of pick the best ones, because that might be the most interesting way of getting really good questions. Because the ones from the chat now have been nice, and I'm sure there's lots of people who couldn't make it to the podcast who probably have questions as well.
T. Diswazi asks, who amongst you is the wizard that gathered you all together to work on this project for years with the zero monetization goal? So funny story there. There is only actually the only people left from the old like 0.3 point whatever versions. The only ones left are myself and Oliver. Everyone else here is someone who came along after that, if I recall. I think Narotiza might have been around as well.
You got the version number incorrect. I played 0.2.4 and then decided to join the team.
I think my first version was 0.2.4.
So like only me and Oliver have been around since actually 2013, I think, though, which is crazy.
Someone in the chat missed the 0.4.0.2 release. It has been released already. John Creddy.
War has changed, hasn't it? Untrusted Life asks the Grave Knight. War never changes. Just like Thrive, we just keep going along, working on Thrive forever. Although it's been a fun time.
It has.
Now's quite a nice time for the project, because I think if you start to get some real popularity, like we're growing, you know, we're a sort of, you know, small indie game, but once you get above a certain threshold, you just kind of get people who just rage against you just because they do. Like, you know, 1% of people are just angry because they are, and so it's nice that we're kind of small enough that we're not getting that yet. So I'm enjoying that part of it.
Except for on r/spore.
Hey, any press is good press.
What's wrong,
Yeah,
crodnu?
agreed.
What are you angry about? What is going on?
Is part of the 1% who's angry all the time.
You just said that. He just is.
Like, here's a meme from the Spore subreddit.
I like it because in some ways we definitely don't want to be the new Spore. Like Spore had cool, like the creature editor in Spore is a real achievement, and I think that's really cool. But ultimately, it was just like quite a boring set of mini games that kind of didn't make any sense and wasn't particularly fun. I don't know a lot of people enjoyed it, but you know, so I think we don't want to be the new Spore. We want to be our own thing that's better and different, and you know, really scientific and hardcore science communication and all that kind of stuff. I think that's much more exciting to be than trying to copy someone else.
Yeah, it's so awesome to be able to like teach people how awesome microbes are. Like, if anybody who's played the game has like read my tooltips, like, oh man, like all the details. It's, I don't know. I greatly enjoy writing like detailed information about things to teach people about things, and it feels so good to like see people like, oh, I didn't know what that was. That's cool. I don't know.
I honestly be
agree.
pretty happy with a microbe stage with, you know, proper evolution mechanics and like a whole patch map. Of course, it'd be awesome if we could keep going from there and have 3D organisms, but it'd be really cool just to have the microbial evolution simulator.
I think if we can hit that great oxygenation event well, I would really enjoy that. I love early history of the Earth, so
Yeah, I agree. I'm hopeful that the microbe stage will kind of stand on its own as a solid game that you can sit and play for a couple of hours, and you know, is a good thing by itself. I'm really hopeful about that, so that'd be really cool.
Gamer Demetrius says, I, no joke, have learned more things about cells from you than from my teachers. Well, that's awesome.
games can teach a lot. I learned a whole bunch from SimCity about city design.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of big ones for me is Kerbal Space Program. I learned tons about orbital mechanics from that. And
Oh, yeah.
Crusader Kings 2 is so good for medieval history. Like, you know, it gives you such a good overview of it.
And just learning the feudal system. I had no understanding of the feudal system until I played that game.
Yeah, I don't know, it's great. Like, I like educational games that are also fun. Like, if anyone here has ever heard of the game Saurian, like where you like play as like a dinosaur and you're actually in like the Hell Creek formation, like it's I don't
There's some
know.
videos of it. Yeah, it looks cool.
I have not actually seen that.
Like some of the species that popped up on there, it's like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I don't know. It's like the raptor that you play as is what, the Utah raptor or something.
Oh, the Utah Raptor.
That game looks really cool. If we could get anywhere close to that, I think that'd be really exciting. One question from the chat. Torbax asked about, will there be an easier version of the game that's a bit easier to read? yes, I'm hopeful that with the tooltips, I really like the high density science information we've got in them at the moment, because I think that really helps with the process information, that kind of thing. And it'd be nice to add some really simple kind of, easy to follow things for people who maybe aren't so scientific, don't speak such good English or anything like that. Just things like makes ATP from glucose for the mitochondria. I think that really then makes it straightforward to see what things do and how they work.
Yeah, you posted a concept. It's like the ATP icon and then a little arrow and then like glucose icon, a little arrow and then ATP. Like that's yeah, that looks good. Like I'd like that.
Because I'm hopeful that could kind of be a step to help people get up to the more scientific kind of information you've got for them, which is great. It's just kind of getting a step to get in between there would be helpful, I think.
Oh, Dakota Raptor. Oh, sorry, Firefish. I feel bad. There's another game called Drunk on Nectar where you play as an insect, and you actually have to survive as that insect. You have to like go through their whole life cycle. Like that's super interesting.
All right,
like,
guys. I gotta get out of here. Good talking to everyone.
Oh, see ya. TLPineapple.
Bye.
Yeah, that's talk to TLPineapple. Catch you soon.
No,
Should
there is
probably go
only
before too long
one
as well.
person with a name that's T followed by a consonant followed by the name of an organism left in the call. That went better in my head.
Yeah, TJWhale and TLPineapple. I didn't realize they were similar until right now that you just pointed that out.
I think we definitely need to hire someone called TKFruitbat. I think that would really fill in the sequence really nicely. So if you're a highly skilled graphics programmer and you want to apply to the team and you want to call your nickname TKFruitbat, then that would really be a pretty nice thing.
TM Anomalocaris.
Sitten time to plug the team joining. So like anyone knows programming or you know someone who knows programming, send them our way so we can make the game faster. And also if someone wants to work on the launcher or the new bug reporting tool, feel free to apply, because I've been doing those all by myself and they have some pretty major features missing, like from the launcher deleting the old game files and browsing them.
Thrive will be a revolutionary game, someone says. Haha. Ha.
I think definitely anyone who's out there who wants to join the team, feel free to apply. It's also a really good thing to have on your CV if you worked on Thrive, because it's a cool project and it's a great thing to talk about and you can really showcase your skills and stuff. So it has being on the team has a lot of value, as well as getting to make a cool game and hang out with us. So if you're interested, feel free to apply.
Yeah, it definitely helps to put in your portfolio if you've worked on like a big actual project, and then you can, if you get an interview, you can talk about that and secure a job.
It looks great on a resume, and it also like actually working in a team on a game, like that's huge, like because now you have experience working on a team instead of just school's like, okay, you're gonna program this and this and this, and it's way different than working on a team. So being able to work on Thrive or any open source game as a member of an actual team of people working together using GitHub and all that other stuff, it really looks good on a resume. I think Thrive is part of the reason I got my internship. So, and like part of the reason they, like I had a phone interview recently. So, yeah, like really good. I think that might actually be a good place to end the podcast. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's not.
Huh?
sorry. There, now I can hear people.
Yes, I think it's about time for us to start wrapping things up.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So
I've had a nice time.
anyone-
Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out. That's been really cool. And thanks for everyone watching the podcast and listening to it later. I appreciate your sort of enthusiasm for the game. That's really kind.
But yeah. So thanks everyone for popping into chat and asking your questions. I kind of like the idea of us creating like a thread for the next podcast and then picking out the best questions. That will allow us to order these podcasts a bit more. I think this time around it's like we're just gonna do a podcast and see what happens. I think it went well, but it'd be nice to have some more structure.
Less awkward pauses
Yeah.
because of me.
Well, it's not just you. Like, you're not the only one who gets quiet sometimes. So bye.
It's
folks.
all my fault.
Anyway, I'll
Not at all.
see you all in a couple months or so.
Okay.
All right. Everyone say bye, and I'll hit stop broadcast.
Yeah. See you, folks. Thanks for popping in.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.